Hey folks, Scott Fischer here, and welcome to another rip-roaring adventure, like literally, really an adventure this time, as we dig into my cover for Ravenloft for Dungeons & Dragons. This shows you it's a front and back cover, and here's a little zoom in the front so you can see the finished work there. Multiple layers, all traditional art on this thing. I have an affinity for Dungeons & Dragons. I played this module as a kid. I'm a big D&D guy, as you guys know, so doing this was really an honor. I feel like I rolled a 20 on this one. So here's the original sketch I sent off to Wizards of the Coast to get their approval on it. Really sloppy, but it got all the main things across that I wanted to get across. This is the tightened up version. This is all on the computer in Photoshop and me just taking my time with everything else. And I'm already feeling daunting by how many things are in this cover. It's gonna take me forever to do this piece. So I transfer it down by printing out the last thing you saw really big, rubbing vine charcoal on the back and redrawing it to the front. That kind of shows you the graphite that's down there or the vine charcoal that's down there. And with that sitting there, it's time to grab a big brush and just start blasting this thing. I was really looking forward to this. This is one of the funnest parts of doing a painting for me, is getting in there with these big brushes and splattering them and letting this texture just, breathe through all over it. Like, I also love seeing how much control I can have with a, what is an 1.5 inch wide brush. Like, can I just use the corner of it and fill in a little thing? And you'll see that down by the birds there, especially if I was able to do that. Then we wet the whole thing. I'm using airbrush medium with this, by the way, guys, to like loosen things up a little bit instead of just water. But I did a gradient on top there, brought that purple down from the top. And now I'm going ahead and I'm going to go after a middle value on these crows because, again, I was a little worried about how many of them had to go. So I just wanted to get a value, and so I felt like I got something done on those guys. Okay, then we're doing a little bit of value on the figure, but not too much because I needed to really get my darkest darks in there. Before I could judge things, I needed to know what was going to happen. So I grabbed my little tiny, metal nib pen. I used Nico nib pens, dipped it in my FW acrylic ink, and then I just started drawing with the straight black because I knew that was going to be the darkest thing in the image. I also know I'm going to be glazing over it later, so I could go as dark as I wanted with this, and I'll be able to bring up the value a little bit. And finally, we're on that last guy over there, but still I'm thinking about the directions. Instead of just filling it as a flat silhouette, I'm using strokes, I'm using volume, I'm trying to build some texture in there. That'll come through hopefully later. Now we're going to the monsters, and I did them in a middle value ink. You could see I'm using almost like a raw sienna or a brick red to do them because I know what their value is going to be based on the value digital study that I had done earlier in the piece. And if I went with, black on them and then I tried to glaze something over, the black line might be too dark. So I wanted to start with something in the middle a little bit, but still paying attention to those forms, really trying to chisel it out with my individual lines. Now we can go ahead and dump a middle value in on these monsters. I love Ravenloft, so classic. You got your zombies, you got werewolves, you got all kinds of classic monsters, ghosts, so spooky. Okay, so then I really had to pay attention here. That was a hard thing to draw, which is a foreshortened hand coming at you holding that sword, because it's a very, straight up and down, very, posed. But I like to have something coming at us if I can. So, figuring out how to get that in there and make it work took some thinking, and then I went ahead and just detailed out the rest of the outfit. And you can see again I'm using a middle value for this. I'm using a brown, kind of a purple brown, and you can see the cup of it. I'm actually dipping right in there. One color to ink this thing, so I don't gotta keep mixing colors. I got a little thing of it. I'm just in and out, in and out, in and out as I blast through this drawing. Now this stuff was not all figured out in the original drawing. I had to figure some of this out on the fly, but that's kind of the fun for me. I love showing all of that lush hair. You gotta be careful you don't get spaghetti hair, which is where you have little strands going everywhere. But because I did so much overlap and areas of hair going on top of each other, it has more of a sculptural feel to it. There you go, a little zoom in, kind of high contrast there, but to give you an idea of what that drawing looked like going down. Oh yeah, that little guy. I still had to draw that little guy. I keep forgetting about him as we go through the piece. So to do Strahd, who's the main villain, the big vampire, the Dracula of this story, I used a lighter color, and also notice I'm using a brush. I just wanted to have a little bit of a fatter line and a little bit of a softer approach than the absolute technical precision of the metal nib pen. I'm using a Robert Simmons white sable, probably, or a rosemary, but it's one of those brushes that's like a long, skinny tip on it. I love pulling lines with those. Got out the fan brush, did a little bit more texture, and went ahead and put a little bit of shading on him, but I know there's a lot of painting to come. Really, this whole bit that you're seeing in the beginning here is me establishing the middle values, trying to get back to what was in that original study. To do that, we grab the red and we go ahead and knock in the coat. You can see that I've put some in like a little plastic lid, and I'm just dipping in it consistently and going over the whole thing and filling it in, trying to get some kind of middle value going on the pants as well. I love this washiness. I like the texture, and you know, all of this texture is gonna come through. You can see it here in the boots, you can see it in the pants. Did some spattering on there. I love that crunchy, gritty kind of vibe that's going on. And you can also see that the line I put looked pretty dark before, but underneath that red, it comes up in value because they're close in value. Oh my gosh. Okay, to do these columns in the surrounding area, I decided I was gonna fill in all the negative space. I like the washy stuff so much, I thought, what if that was just exposed in the light line? So instead of doing it in solid black and then going over it with light line, I decided to do the reverse, which was, oh my God, it was so painful. It took so long. I probably have 2 or 3 days just into when by the time I get done with the whole thing. But we try to get these values right. So I went ahead and went with the light blue behind all the figures, put everything back. I went ahead and decided I just need to know these values before I know how far I'm going to push things. So then I got up the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser here, because I got too dark in some areas. So I was able to go in with a magic eraser and lighten some things up. You can see me using it on the forehead of Strahd there too, to bring those values up a little bit higher, closer to what was in my study. Now I'm taking that airbrush medium and a little thin paint, and I'm putting it over the whole thing. I'm trying to ghost out Strahd. You see, he was still too dark, so I actually lightened him up with a light glaze of the white. Now, those lines that were so strong before are missing because of the dark brown I put on top of them, so I had to take a darker sepia and re-ink some of the stuff around the glove and into the hair. And then I was able to just go ahead and grab the lighter colored white ink and knock in some of those highlights. But for the main part of this, I would say I establish a middle value for something with a wash, and I go like a step lighter. I'm using the same white on everything, but because the middle values are different, it reacts differently to what's going on underneath it. Using a makeup sponge, I'm rubbing in this orange here. The problem with acrylic ink sometimes is it dries so quick that you can't get very smooth transition. So a makeup sponge is a good way to scrub it in. After I got that orange in there from the glow, I went ahead and took the liner brush again, and I just did a little bit of white outline around things to really get that lantern to start to pop and to glow. That gives you a sense of that. You can see all that texture hanging out in there as we scroll up and down this piece. Okay, back on these columns. Oh my God, I was dreading it so much because I knew this was going to take hours. In fact, screw it. Here we go. We're going to show you. This is the advanced version. Boom. I filled in the dark for everything in every column all the way around it. There you go. Now we can have some more fun. We can draw those birds. Another daunting task, but I love drawing birds. I love the feathers. I love the angles that I have, and they were pretty solid in my original preliminary piece, so I was able to just kind of riff off of that and go in and have a good time using pretty much the same color of ink the whole time, once again using a Nico nib pen and drawing those things out and really kind of getting into it, getting into the feathers, feeling how they overlap. Now I finally get to draw, which is this big sort of symbol that's in Ravenloft, some kind of medallion sort of thing. And that started to feel like, okay, now that I'm feeling like the back is getting a little bit of finish to it, not quite or anything, but at least it's not just murky fogginess all over on the left-hand side of the piece. So it's really about making myself feel more confident that I will eventually get to the end of the rainbow here and finish this off. But you can see all those birds. I forget how many there are. If they're 30, I'm not sure. I'd have to count them again, but there you go. Now, my plan from the get-go is just to use the birds as line art. I'm not actually going to put value on them. It's that mixture of like drawing and graphicness. But look at this. That's fun. Getting that milky paint out again and spattering it and slapping it and having it drip down and then getting out the hairdryer to dry it before it dissipates too much. And you can see those drips just activating that surface. I talk about using 3 values a lot. So for the background on the back of the cover, the stuff going on behind the ravens and the big kind of symbol, I decided on 3 values. And one was a blue, and then they move closer into the purples as you go up. So there's the second value going in as I move up the piece. Keeping it pretty simple, but it does take a while to go in and go behind everything. And finally, the third value, which is that sort of more red, I don't even know what color that is, gray, red kind of a thing, filling in all the way up the piece. Now to make that look a little bit cleaner, I use the liner brush again and I outline all of the wrought iron, the flat wrought iron in red. Lets it stand out. Of course, red, blood, you gotta love that. Okay, this is blurry video, unfortunately, but you'll get the idea. I'm going in and I'm bringing up the highlights in the pants and kind of rendering up areas, doing a little bit of the rim lighting that's being sent off from the lantern down at the bottom. A little bit of cool light coming from the backside. You can see there, and there it is all crisped up for you guys. And the rim lighting all over the zombies and the witch and the werewolf as well. Look at them both. They're really almost 3 values. It's like a textured middle value. I went darker, I went lighter. Oh yeah, this guy. We got to go back to him again. Okay, this is a real-time video. It's the only real-time video in the whole process video that we're showing here. But you can see how methodical I am, how slow I am as I go in and I render in these highlights on this little dude hanging out up there. You know he's going to be annoying. Like if it was a movie, he'd be so annoying. What are you doing? Hey, man, what are you doing? And that's what we do when we're working on D&D and this kind of stuff. You know, you think about the story. You think about the characters behind these things. Little bitty strokes going on here. Oh, yeah, we got to get those fangs to pop a little bit. Ding, 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 ding. I like to put a little bit of real-time video in there once in a while because you see this stuff and look how fast I'm moving, but now you know how slow it really is in person. Just trying to finish off the coat a little bit, get a little bit more design in there. I want everything to just chill as you get to the bottom, so I don't want a lot of contrast down there. That's why I kept those values pretty close to each other. And I'm able to just go in and do that last bit of highlighting and pushing the darks. This is what I call those nooks and crannies. Like if you got an English muffin and butter's melted on it, and sometimes it's in the nooks and crannies a little more than others. That's where I'm going in, I'm spotting those blacks, or I'm hitting the highlights with just that little extra ding, 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 ding. A little more highlighting going around the rim. Okay, let's go ahead and do a little bit more paint on the symbol thing. So I know I'm going to use red as an accent color, and it's going to be pretty strong. I also know all of the eyes of these ravens are going to be red. So what I had to do first was use white. The white brought it up so that now I can go in and put red on top of it. If I hadn't done that, red is very transparent, and it would have been difficult to see the red within all the middle value that was already there. So that little dot of white before I put the red down is really going to make that red pop, and it's going to let the light penetrate the red. I actually was surprised how fast that symbol went in the end. I was sort of dreading it, but in the end, I just did a little bit of washing on there to do some of the modeling. I used a warm gray from the highlight side up in the upper right of it, and then you'll notice I'm going to work in a cool purple gray. Here it comes from the bottom, and when you get a warm light and a cool light and you put it on the same thing, it gives it immense volume pretty fast. So there's not much to it, but it actually worked out really good. Okay, so Strahd has a sword, and this is another character from Ravenloft who's painted on the sword, but it's just a reflection. So I wanted to keep it very light. So in other words, the darkest values are not going to go very much past a 50% because it needs to act as a reflection, and I don't want it to distract from our main figure whose hair you can just see at the bottom. So a little bit of rendering, a little bit of highlighting to kind of get across that idea that it's a reflection. You can see that bevel of the sword that cuts across the figure. That certainly helps with that. And that kind of gave me the confidence to go ahead and do Strahd here. I'm using a filbert, a pretty fat filbert, to fill in that first stuff. It gave it a soft edge as I rendered it up. Now I'm able to grab the liner brush and do a little bit more hatch work on there. But again, I don't want it to be as crisp as what's happening on her. So it's going to be done with this brush. And, you know, I'll be careful not to go in and to do too much like little tiny on him versus her to get her to pop. We need to have something in the distance here. So we're going in and we're doing some trees with yet another value. Now, again, all this was spelled out for me earlier on, so I knew what value to kind of do here and to get it to set back and just activate it. So think about all the layers like a stage. We have so many layers going back. It's like a stage production. You know, I think about waves in a stage that would go back and forth like this, different layers of waves. That's how I'm building these things. And here's the finished art, guys. Again, it was an absolute pleasure to do this. I mean, it's freaking Ravenloft. I mean, for me, if you told a 12-year-old in me I was going to be painting Ravenloft, I'd have thought you were crazy. Well, I appreciate you guys sticking with me and checking this out. You'll be able to get this at gaming stores. It's the gaming store exclusive cover, so it's not going to be in Amazon or Barnes & Noble, that kind of thing. And follow me on Instagram if you want to, you know, get the day-to-day blow on this kind of stuff. Okay, guys, take care.